Montauk saw a number of bodies fly in the air. Millie, did you see that? I saw it, I saw it. Montauk reached inside the parlor wall and pulled the main switch. The images drained away, as if the water had been let out from a gigantic crystal bowl of hysterical fish. The three women turned slowly and looked with unconcealed irritation and then dislike at Montauk. When do you suppose the war will start? He said. I notice your husbands aren't here tonight? Oh, they come and go, said Mrs. Phelps. In again out again Finnegan, the army called Pete yesterday. He'll be back next week. The army said so. Quick war. 48 hours they said, and everyone home. That's what the army said. Quick war. Pete was called yesterday and they said he'd be back next week. Quick. The three women fidgeted and looked nervously at the empty mud-colored walls. I'm not worried, said Mrs. Phelps. I'll let Pete do all the worrying. She giggled. I'll let old Pete do all the worrying. Not me. I'm not worried. Yes, said Millie. Let old Pete do the worrying. It's always someone else's husband dies, they say. I've heard that, too. I've never known any dead man killed in a war. Killed jumping off buildings, yes, like Gloria's husband last week, but from wars? No, not from wars, said Mrs. Phelps. Anyway, Pete and I always said, no tears, nothing like that. It's our third marriage each and we're independent. Be independent, we always said. He said, if I get killed off, you just go right ahead and don't cry, but get married again, and don't think of me. That reminds me, said Mildred. Did you see that Clara Dove 5-minute romance last night in your wall? Well, it was all about this woman who Montauk said nothing but stood looking at the women's faces as he had once looked at the faces of saints in a strange church he had entered when he was a child. The faces of those enameled creatures meant nothing to him, though he talked to them and stood in that church for a long time, trying to be of that religion, trying to know what that religion was, trying to get enough of the raw incense and special dust of the place into his lungs and thus into his blood to feel touched and concerned by the meaning of the colorful men and women with the porcelain eyes and the blood-ruby lips. But there was nothing, it was a stroll through another store, and his currency strange and unusable there, and his passion cold, even when he touched the wood and plaster and clay. So it was now, in his own parlor, with these women twisting in their chairs under his gaze, lighting cigarettes, blowing smoke, touching their sun-fired hair and examining their blazing fingernails as if they had caught fire from his look. Their faces grew haunted with silence. They leaned forward at the sound of Montauk swallowing his final bite of food. They listened to his feverish breathing. The three empty walls of the room were like the pale brows of sleeping giants now, empty of dreams. Montauk felt that if you touched these three staring brows you would feel a fine salt sweat on your fingertips. The perspiration gathered with the silence and the subaudible trembling around and about and in the women who were burning with tension. Any moment they might hiss a long sputtering hiss and explode. Montauk moved his lips. "Let's talk." The women jerked and stared. "How are your children, Mrs. Phelps?" he asked. "You know I haven't any. No one in his right mind, the good Lord knows, would have children," said Mrs. Phelps, not quite sure why she was angry with this man. "I wouldn't say that," said Mrs. Bowles. "I've had 2 children by cesarean section. No use going through all that agony for a baby. The world must reproduce, you know, the race must go on. Besides, they sometimes look just like you, and that's nice." 2 cesareans tamed the trick, yes, sir. "Oh," my doctor said, "cesareans aren't necessary, you've got the hips for it, everything's normal," but I insisted. "Cesareans or not, children are ruinous, you're out of your mind," said Mrs. Phelps. "I plunked the children in school 9 days out of 10. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month, it's not bad at all.